Hello everyone and welcome back to the GeekWave. This is the low budget show. It's the show so low it has no budget. I of course am your host Taryn Barker, and this week things are going to be a little different as they have been for a while now. I am in the process of moving. So I have a lot of stuff going on. Eventually I'll be doing a live stream where you'll see me packing up everything in this room. But until then, I got a lot of other stuff I'm working on. So the first half of this video, you will see my face. But when we get into the main topic, I sadly will not be able to use the camera. I'll be too busy. So it's going to be a late night recording and you're going to hear me talking about our main topic. And that is the Eric Andre show. That's right. I wasn't aware that this was coming back. And now it is. It's coming back this year. It's going to be very exciting to see that return. But I was like, let's go back and talk about what makes that show so funny. What kind of humor is it talking about? Just because I think that's very enjoyable stuff. And I love talking about the Eric Andre show. So sharing my love of that with you guys, I was like, hell yeah, I'm going to do it. We are going to talk about that. And as I talk right now, I'm getting out my new pieces because that's what we're doing in this part of the episode. We're going to be talking the news, and there's a lot more news this week just because I haven't really caught up on the GeekWave. I've just been so busy that I just haven't found the time to record this episode. So it's going to be a lot of news, and it's going to be a really fun one. I hope you guys are excited. So yes, this video part will be all the news. Then when you don't see this pretty face, you'll know we're talking about the Eric Andre show. So time codes will be in the description for those of you who want to hear that main topic. But if you want to hear some news from the past couple of weeks, here we go. Let's jump into it. And we're going to start with Fangoria kind of comes back from the dead. That's kind of cool. I've always known what Fangoria is. It's never been something I've read constantly, but I've always enjoyed it. I think it's a very interesting publishing, printing stuff, it's just fascinating. It's fun. It's going to give you some incentive to read new stuff, and I think that's important. But they have bought a couple of, websites or domains for things that are video production stuff. So I guess maybe we'll see them working on some, news pieces or movies or television. Maybe they'll have their own streaming thing kind of like that. I think that's really fun. Fangoria is a great way to get into that horror world, especially someone who, like me, doesn't watch a lot of horror movies but kind of wants to get caught up in that stuff. Fangoria is a great way to do that. So if they're looking for original content for their production studios, hit me up, Fangoria. I would love to work for you guys. I got a bunch of more comedic horror pitches, but it could be really fun. I'm looking forward to this. I think just seeing the relaunch, maybe we'll see some. I'd love to see maybe even just a different type of magazine come back. I could see them doing a weekly podcast. I could definitely see something like that coming down the line where they talk to people in the industry or fans and that stuff. I could see that being something that this could go forward and doing. Something that Wizard should have done, just kind of adapt with the times. But this is really fun. So Fangoria, I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to be doing with this new stuff. So it could be really interesting. And like I said, I got ideas for you, Fangoria. If you're looking for some content, hit me up. I'll give you anything. No, not anything, just enough where you guys would like it. And our next piece of news is because Star Trek Lower Decks was so successful, guess who wants to get in on that action? That's right, Fox. What do they have to do? That's right, X-Files. So, the thing that makes X-Files great? Mulder and Scully. Yeah, forget it. They're not going to be in here. This is called X-Files Albuquerque. It's going to follow the cases of the X-Files that are too quirky and weird for Mulder and Scully. Could be good. I don't think it will be. This one, I get what you're doing. Just make an animated Mulder and Scully, or just focus on something else. It's not the X-Files. I don't know. This seems weird. Hopefully it's good. I guess they're trying to set up this idea that there are more people in the X-Files, so I guess we'll have to see what happens there. But it's not a Star Trek Lower Deck situation where you can expand outwards. This just feels like we want to make something that people like because Rick and Morty is popular. I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't expect it to be that good, though. That's the problem. And our next piece of news here, Silk might be getting a live-action TV series on Amazon? That's a weird place for it. Why are we having these Marvel products all over on every platform? Hulu and Disney and whatever Sony wants to do, or Crave and stuff. But Amazon, really? That's a weird one to me because it doesn't seem like Amazon would want that, especially since The Boys has been so successful for them. Silk's a very interesting choice. I'm glad she's in the talks for something like this because she could definitely hold her own. But it also comes to that thing again, how can you really do this without doing the Spider-Man stuff? You kind of need to have Spider-Man in here somewhere. We gotta show. He has to show up at some point. That's all I'm saying. Like, you can't do this and not have Spider-Man show up. Right? It's just weird. As Silk's a cool character. You guys should all read her books or any book she's in. She's really fun. But Amazon, weird place for her. And no Spider-Man. How's that gonna work? I don't know. It's weird. But I'm excited. So we got another piece here. We got a trailer to talk about. And that trailer is for Dune. Here's a property I don't know anything about. I think I've seen the original movie once, and I thought it was tedious and boring, and I never wanted to watch it again. I'll probably be watching it again for this channel for something I want to work on, but until then, this trailer, it's got a bunch of sexy actors I love. I'm only going to watch this for the cast. I love Chalamet, I love Ferguson, I love Batista, Momoa, Isaac, Zendaya, who's the other one? Javier Bardem's in this. Did I say Brolin? I can't remember, and a Skarsgård. Like, it's a great cast. It is a fantastic cast, actually, and I think it's going to be a really cool one just to see what's coming down the line. And Denis Villeneuve, he's a fantastic director. He's an auteur if there ever was one in the modern times. The problem is his movies don't make money. And that's sad to say. I hope this does well, because I think they're already planning like a TV series to show time between the movies, and then they're doing a sequel movie. I think that's kind of what they've been talking about with this. It looks good. We see the sandworm. It looks good. I love Timothée Chalamet. I'll watch anything that guy does. Him and Pattinson are the future, and I love seeing them in everything. This looks really fun. I'm very excited to see how this could turn out. A bunch of sexy actors in the desert wearing science fiction clothes. I'm on board. You got me sold. I'm definitely going to watch that and enjoy that. So here's some more news. That's kind of, I guess, more of the recent news stuff we could talk about, and that is, guess what's ending? The Walking Dead with a 22 or 24 episode final season. It's going to go over the course of 2 years, and it's about damn time that show ends, because it has been desperately needing to stop existing. Because it's overstated its welcome. Nobody wants to watch it anymore, and it just feels like it's just the little train that did, and now it won't stop doing it. And I hate that, because you need to know when to end things to make them good again. But on top of that news, too, guess what? Carol and Daryl are getting a spin-off. Because that's fine. I don't care. Like, Norman Reedus is an actor. Is he a good one? I don't know. He's good for AMC, so I can understand wanting to pay him millions and millions of dollars to stay and work on a show. And, like, nobody cares about the expanded cast, so just keep him, keep Carol. Makes sense to me that you do that. Is it necessary? Of course not. Is it going to be good? I doubt it, because it's just going to be more of the same with less people. Who the fuck cares? Who cares? It's just, who cares? It doesn't sound compelling or interesting. I don't know. Hopefully it's something worthwhile, but at this point I'm like, it can't be. There's no way this is going to be a success like they want it to be. And that's good. So, Walking Dead is ending at season 11. Thank you. Are you still making those movies? What's happening with Fear the Walking Dead? With your other spinoff? With your other spinoff? With your Daryl spinoff? You're not really killing anything. So, it's just great. Fantastic. And here's some news that kind of just slid into my notifications when I was looking at stuff. I guess Nintendo is seriously considering making movies now. So they want to take some of their old properties and turn them into blockbusters. I'm hoping. You guys, we did an early GeekWave episode talking about this, where we're talking about the Smash Brothers cinematic universe. Make it all cartoons. Make it all animated. And do genre pieces. Like I've always said, you can do something cool with Star Fox, you can do something cool with Donkey Kong, with Metroid, with Legend of Zelda. Legend of Zelda could be your fantasy epic. Do that, it could be really cool. And then of course just a Mario movie would be really fun. You could take that in a lot of directions. You could start off where you're rescuing Princess Peach, then you could lean into the galaxy stuff. But it could just be a really fun thing, and I'd love to see it. So if you guys want to see an early episode of the GeekWave talking about this exact topic and this piece of news, I think you should watch it. I will put it up here and you guys could check it out. And here's like the main piece of news for this week that I wanted to talk about, because I think it's very important. Something that a lot of people have speculated in this online community. DC Universe, the app that never was. Well, never was. It existed. Not a lot of people used it. It is switching to a comics-only format called DC Universe Infinite. So this is going to be like their Marvel Unlimited. You could be able to read back issues of comics. Hopefully you could get some new stuff on there too. And that means that all of these shows that are on that are going to be moving to HBO Max. We kind of already knew this was happening. Things like Doom Patrol were already over there. Swamp Thing was moving to the CW along with Stargirl. The only ones we weren't really sure of were Young Justice and Harley Quinn, and we did get confirmation that Harley Quinn will be getting a third season, so that's very exciting. I love those first 2 seasons. This makes me really happy. I'm so glad we're finally saying, yep, we're moving this over there, because now something cool can happen with it. It's about time, honestly. And they needed this. Marvel Unlimited did really good for them. And I think doing that for DC, it's going to get a lot of people interested in reading more comics again. I wish this was what the app was originally, and you just kind of waited till HBO Max, because you got to know that there was probably some cross-reference between the two of them, right? That like Warner Brothers knew they were going to do HBO Max and DC Universe. Why not just wait for one so it's less stylized and you could watch more than just a DC property on there? So I hope that means all of the cartoons and everything that are on DC Universe are also going to be moving over to HBO Max, because I'd love to watch a lot more content. But no surprises. Everything is pretty basic. We all expected this. And it's cool. It's cool. I mean, it's great to hear we got confirmation. So I think this means we'll see a lot more great content coming down the line from all these places. So that is the news for this episode. And when we return, you will no longer see this pretty face, but we will be talking about the Eric Andre show. So stay tuned for that. So I lied. You guys are going to be seeing my face after all for this portion, because I'm recording it a different day than I was the last one. But I am still eager to talk about this topic, and I apologize if this is going to be shorter than numerous other episodes of the GeekWave, just because I've been pretty busy and I haven't really had a time to delve deeper into my notes on this. And basically what I wanted this episode to be was why the Eric Andre show works, what is the stuff about it that makes it interesting and compelling and good TV. And I thought we'd break it down into a couple categories. First off, one category will be Eric himself, the other one's Hannibal, and then just kind of what the guest reaction is to everything. But before that, we got just, some stuff to cover about it. So you guys know I've done a GeekWave episode earlier talking about late night and the best hosts of late night, and it's a formula I love. I think it's a very important staple of television, and one that is ripe for parody. But I wouldn't say the Eric Andre show is a parody. It doesn't feel like it's necessarily making fun or trying to do a satirical formula for those kind of shows. It's more like a show in itself that is as good as something like Letterman or Conan. But it's just taking it into a different approach, and I think it really works. Eric himself is probably as good as a host as anybody else, especially for the type of humor and the narrative he's trying to drive forward when he's doing his show. He is up there with David Letterman, with a Conan O'Brien. He is one of those guys, but it's just his show is different in the style it's trying to do from those. And it works really well. He's a very likable host, a very interesting guy, and he makes the show work. Now, I will say it's not for everyone. I mean, of course it's not. There are some things about this show that the average person wouldn't like or wouldn't understand, and that's fine, because I don't think it needs to be for everyone. Late night itself isn't for everyone. It's for a certain type of person who enjoys the formula, enjoys seeing the comedians and the guests come on and talk about stuff they're passionate about. In itself, it's not for everyone. But especially this show, where its humor dives deep into different places and goes into weird things, it's definitely going to make some people turn their heads in a weird way. And one of the things, too, I do want to bring up as I kind of adjust my notes here. Normally, when I do my Geek Waves, I have my notes in front of me, but because I have a different setup currently, I can't have my notes in front of me. So if I'm looking off camera a few times, it's just because of that, and I apologize. There are countless think pieces on the Eric Andre show. You can go to YouTube, you can type in Eric Andre show. All those channels that watch it or enjoy it, they all have their opinions on what it means, what it's supposed to represent, why it's a critical darling, why it's a genius. But I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to overanalyze everything, just because I don't think that's the kind of show I want to do here. There are people who've done it better, whose whole job and whose identity is to analyze this show. Instead, I'm going to talk about it at face value. What are we seeing on the screen? What are we getting from it, and why it's so important and interesting? And that's what we're going to do. So if I'm rambling a bit, it's because I'm trying to stall for some time. But let's jump into it. So what makes the Eric Andre show work? For starters, we got to talk about Eric Andre, and he is a guy I really like. There are a few people in this industry who could truly commit to the bit like he does, and that's I think one of the essential things about his comedy. It's why he's the best host for this show. Eric will commit to a bit even if it doesn't go anywhere. And that is a big part of his humor, I think, is just that sometimes it's supposed to not be funny. And in that aspect, I think it's kind of like the anti-joke, right? Where you're seeing, oh, here he is on screen. We're out on the streets, we're doing one of the street bits. Oh, maybe it's not as funny as you're expecting it to be. You're not getting the big laugh or reaction from the people watching it. But the point is, that's the joke itself. The joke is, it's not supposed to be funny or this like well thought out thing with a punchline. It's just supposed to be, here's what's happening in the real world that you're seeing, and it's crazy and it's weird. It's not funny, it's just something that's happening. And that's why it's an anti-joke. It's not supposed to make you laugh or think about it. And that's a great part of his humor too. He is simply just doing whatever he wants. There's really no rhyme or reason to what he's doing. It's just, is this kind of funny? Is this a different take on something you've seen before? Where we go out onto the streets and interview people? Is this a different take on that? Of course it is. It's bizarre and different. Eric's great when he comes to that sort of stuff. He zigs in a really over-the-top fashion when you're expecting him to zag. When you go onto the actual show, when you get a guest on there and you are expecting it to be like, oh, here's the questions, here's the formula, your classic late night, he takes it into a different way. And I'd say it's kind of like surreal humor. And that's a weird way to put it, where it's just like you're kind of taking the observations or the notes of everyday existence, especially in this existence that is late night television. You're just turning it on its head to the point where that becomes the joke itself, where you're seeing whether it's a bit like he breaks his desk or he has doppelgangers come out on screen, or it's just like a silly game where they're shooting people, the desk comes alive, just stupid stuff like that you wouldn't expect from a regular talk show. That's what he's doing here. He's subverting your expectations of what a talk show is in this surreal anti-joke way, where sometimes the bit itself isn't funny. It's just something that's happening that you're not expecting. And that's the humor. There's something about that that's just so interesting that it's like, it really doesn't matter. Like, this show has so many things going for it where you just feel it could fail easily. And that's okay. I mean, we should let creators or creative types do whatever they want, because I think you can get some really weird comedy out of that and some really weird stories out of that. And that's what this feels like. This isn't Eric trying to make a point about what late night is. It's not him trying to parody late night. And it's not this idea that, oh, we can only be funny when we're making fun of something. It's just more like, this literally doesn't matter. It doesn't. Like, we're just existing here, doing whatever we want. And you could laugh, you could find it funny, or you could just watch what you're seeing and it's just going to be something that happens. There's really no rhyme or reason to it. And I think that is brilliant. Not a lot of comedians can do that. Like, I'm trying to think of a few comedians where that's just like the exponential day stuff is kind of like the anti-joke. I would hearken it to somebody like Norm Macdonald, who is very just more dry about his approach to this stuff, where it's just like kind of making fun of the everyday thing. Even to an extent, Jerry Seinfeld, but Jerry Seinfeld like plays up the joke of like the everyday stuff, and it's just, there's really nobody who can do it like Eric Andre, where you just randomly go out wherever you are, or you have somebody come on your show, and it's just so absurd and obscene and different than anything you'd expect that's why it's a joke. It is surreal humor masquerading as an anti-joke. It's so off the walls, pointless, and meaningless that's why it becomes funny. And the reactions are not what you're expecting. If you're expecting Eric to say something nice, he's going to say something insane. If you're expecting him to do something stupid, something normal is going to happen. He's subverting your expectations at every turn, and it's working damn well. There's so much about this show that could have went wrong. So much. But this is kind of why it has a cult following. And why I always say that, the humor is not for everyone. Like, you have to truly understand what they're doing here to really appreciate it. Because you could get anybody who enjoys late night, and they might not like it. I for one, think it's very enjoyable, but it's not for everyone. It's definitely, I don't want this to sound like a criticism, but it's for that Adult Swim audience who loves jokes, loves adult comedy, but understands that sometimes go batshit crazy with it. Take chances, take risks. Don't just, stay on the sidelines. You can do whatever you want, and it's going to be funny, especially if your audience doesn't know what the hell's coming up, or your guest even doesn't know what exactly is happening here. There's just something so compelling and so realistic about that is just very fascinating and very interesting. Eric Andre, I put him up there with some of the best hosts just because that's what his show is. His show isn't about asking the questions. It's about making the guest feel uncomfortable, unhinged, and terrified of what's coming next. But as good as a host as Eric Andre is, no one compares to the dry wit, the dry surrealism, just the realistic approach to everything going on in the world around them, like Hannibal Buress. Hannibal, to me, is one of the best sidekicks ever, and his just portrayal of everything he does definitely works for a show like this. Hannibal, I've always found his comedy funny because it's a lot like Eric in like, oh, why are we doing this? Everything's so weird, Like, the joke isn't funny, but he's just observing the real world. He's just like, why is it called bi-weekly if it's twice a week or every 2 weeks, That's the kind of joke that Hannibal goes for, and it works really well. And that's why he's the perfect foil to go against somebody like Eric Andre, because Eric will literally, fight a PA, he'll beat up a guy, he will dress up in a costume, run down the street, kick a car, all that crazy stuff, shoot some people. Hannibal will sit there or stand there, he'll just be chill. Either it's munching on a head of lettuce, eating a bag of chips, just letting the world around him happen. And he reacts in the only rational way to everything that Eric's doing. But only sometimes he will get as crazy as Eric and take those chances and say those weird things that you're not expecting from him. There's something really cool about that. Hannibal is the perfect sidekick for this show. His humor counters Eric to the point where it works, and it doesn't come across as pandering or annoying. And that's the important thing about a sidekick, because a good sidekick can make or break your show. If they're bad, you're not going to want to see them on screen. If they're good, you're going to want to see them more, but the fact that they're subdued makes it better. So when you have the clashing conflicts of comedy, Eric's surreal anti-joke and the same kind of joke being told from Hannibal, but it's dry-witted, it's calm and collected. It works so well. I admire Hannibal. He's definitely more in the style of jokes I'd go for. My favorite Hannibal joke of the entire show is when Kristen Ritter's on the show, and they watch the video, and apparently the room's starting to smell, and she's like, "Hey, Kristen, I can take you to a place that doesn't smell like this." That itself is not really funny, but it's like the most amazing thing someone could say that just makes it funny and so bizarre, man. Like, it just worked so well, so drastically different from what you'd be expecting. It's brilliant. Hannibal's a great character to have on this show. Their personalities work so well. I love it. And you could tell there's a genuine camaraderie between the two of them. They've done stuff where it's like, oh, let's hijack each other's Twitter. We'll go on talk shows together. They work really well, and they both understand what this formula needs to be. They both get the anti-joke. They both get the surreal joke, and it works perfectly. The show is brilliant because of these two. And of course, what show would be complete without talking about the guests? And this is like the core of what the show is, whether it's literally in studio when a guest comes on, or you're in public on the street. Whether or not a guest knows what's happening or is in full understands the joke completely, that's what makes it brilliant, because you never know what's going to happen, and it could go to a lot of weird places. And trying to figure out what the guests know or what they really don't understand is truly amazing. Like, honestly, I would call it something like organized chaos, where you're trying your best to get a genuine reaction out of these people by doing something so obscene and unheard of before on television that it becomes crazy and frightening. That's pretty cool. You wouldn't be expecting something like that from a show. It's just amazing. And it works perfectly, because you could tell some guests are like, oh, we're going to do this bit like Lance Reddick when he dresses up as LeVar Burton. He was part of that bit. But sometimes you just do some crazy stuff where somebody comes screaming and fighting Eric or slapping Hannibal, or whether or not something crazy happens behind the scenes or all that weird stuff. It's genuinely amazing just to see how the guests react to everything going on, and whether it's something stupid Eric wants them to play, or the frightening nature, like when Jack Black's on and he keeps getting electrocuted. There's something so amazing about that, where it's not trying to make your guests feel comfortable and like, oh, we're at home, I could talk to Letterman all night, or I could talk to Ferguson even longer into commercial break. This is more like, get me the hell out of here, I don't know what's going on. And it could come across as very disturbing, but they make it work comedically, because you cut it down enough to the point where you're only seeing the frightening, intense moments, and it works so well. Like, I understand, like, some guests don't really know what the show is going to be, but the ones that do really know how to play it up. Somebody like Tyler, the creator, I think he definitely understood what that needed to be, and it just made it that much better, because he understood this isn't taken to be serious. This isn't supposed to be taken serious. And it worked because of it. I think it's brilliant. Like, the show is just great. And that's why it works. It works because Eric and Hannibal are both these guys that are questioning everything that you have to do in order to make a joke, and instead are just running with a gag that could either go somewhere or not, but it's still going to go and happen. And that's what makes it funny. They're not trying to make you laugh. They're just trying to do stuff. And that's the weirdest part about this comedy, and why it works so well, because the guests are like us. We're like, what is going on? This makes no sense. I thought I was going to be on a talk show. And now here we are doing some crazy ass shit in a random place I don't really understand. Not to get too deep with this topic, but this could be viewed as a form of existentialism. You know, where the mere fact that it exists is why it shouldn't exist. Like, I mean, we could get into that a little bit more, but it's like, the whole idea of this show is there's kind of no meaning to any of it. There's no point for what we're doing. And it just kind of becomes this like existential reason of like, is that the joke? Is the joke is there's no joke? Is the joke is there's no meaning to it? We're just doing stuff? That's the point. And I think that's what Eric wants you to feel when you're watching the show. Is like, oh, this is just a thing that's going on. There's really no reason for this to happen, is there? It's just something that exists, and we got to live with it. I think that's something to be admired, something to be respected, and it's just impressive. It's existentialism, it's surreal humor, and it's the anti-joke all rolled into one in a weird parody. I say parody lightly, even though it's not a parody. It's this weird idea of what a talk show should be. The show's brilliant. Of course, it's not for everyone, but those who understand what it's trying to do, they understand it well, and it's definitely that Adult Swim audience. I'm not criticizing anybody who likes Adult Swim or doesn't like Adult Swim, but some people who watch that content like a little bit more of a subversive joke or something that's going to be a little different than the standard, network television. And that's okay. There's a realness to it that's really fun to explore and just take into these different strides. And that realness is, what's the point of it all? We could get a little deeper here. There's no meaning to life. Everything happens randomly. And that's what this show is trying to tell you. Nothing really matters. Laugh at what you want. And if you don't laugh, it doesn't matter anyways, because we're still making another one. Season 5 is returning this year after a huge hiatus. I can't be more excited to see where this show is going to go. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen in this season and where it's going to take different opportunities, especially in the modern era that we are in of 2020. I think that could be really cool. Are we going to see more frightened guests? What kind of skits are we going to see on the streets? There's something there that could be really interesting. So why does the Eric Andre show work? It's because it doesn't matter if it does or not. It just is there, and that's what makes it work. You don't have to like it. You don't have to love it. You don't have to hate it. It works because everything that's happening is just happening, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. So don't take it too seriously. Don't do your think pieces. Of course, you can do them if you want, but just remember, we're all going to be dead in like 80 years anyways, so take it in strides, laugh at what you want, enjoy Eric and Hannibal making chaos for their guests and people on the streets, and just have fun with it. There's no reason to not, so that's why it works. It's just absurd, crazy bullshit, and it's very fun. I love the Eric Andre show. I love it for all these reasons, and I'm sorry we are going to be cutting this episode short this week. But, like always, I do like to leave you guys with a couple of recommendations for stuff you can check out. First off, watch that first Dune movie. Let me know what you think. It could be good. It could be bad. Of course, read Silk. She's got a couple of titles you could check out from there at Marvel Comics. Definitely worth reading. The character is very fascinating, very unique. Not a lot of people like her in comics, and I think she's a very enjoyable character to read. And of course, go to Google, go to Eric Andre Show compilations, and just watch the manic energy that this guy exudes into his talk show, and tell me he isn't up there with guys like Conan, Letterman, Ferguson, or Kimmel. He is. He's that good, he's that engaging, and he is well worth your time. So thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the GeekWave. I'm sorry we are cutting it a little short this week, but that's just because we got a lot more great content coming to you later down the line. And of course, thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, all that good stuff. And I will see you in the next one. Have fun, stay safe, good luck. Tsunami Studios.